guys, welcome to another Bitter Butter Render Blender tutorial, and today I'll be showing you how to get this cool texture transition in Blender. So how do I do this? Well, here's my 3-step plan. First, we set up our textures, then we find the transition between our textures, so the gradient and all, and then we set the drivers to, well, basically drive the motion of the transition. So what are the requirements for this? Well, it's not too hard. You need two textures that are very similar. In this case, it's the same texture, just the colors that are different, and you need them both to be the same in the UV unwrapping aspect. That's a very important step. Now, the textures I used are from this awesome YouTube channel, which I'll link in the description below. Make sure to check them out. But for now, I will link these textures in my description as well. So let's get started. First, I'm gonna remove the textures, and I'm gonna add a new texture. I'm gonna name this transformation. You can name it whatever you want, really, it doesn't matter. First, what we're gonna do is open up our first texture, Shift A, image, and open. Once you've gotten the first texture, you can plug that into the base color of the principal BSDF. Obviously, you can do all the other stuff, making it look realistic and stuff, but just for the sake of the tutorial, we'll just keep it at that. Now for the second one, what we're gonna do is Shift D to duplicate this, but we're gonna tab out of this one and open up our second texture, which is going to be this one. Now what we need to do is to, well, mix these two textures, because right now it's, well, nothing really, it's just this texture that's connected. To do that, we can add a mix shader, plug it right here, and plug in the BSDF of this one to here, and the bottom one to the bottom one. Order doesn't necessarily matter. Right now, as you can see, it's tried something weird. It's just combined the textures. To fix this, we need to, well, basically add a factor to tell it how to switch colors. So first, we're gonna add a color ramp just for the sake of tweaking it in the future. Plug in the color into the factor. Then we're gonna need two textures. First one being a gradient texture to get the transition, and the second one being a noise texture to be able to get that grainy look right around the edges. Now that we've gotten these two, well, textures, we need to have a way to be able to combine them. To do that, first we're going to add a mix node, and instead of float, we're going to change it to color. The noise texture's color in the top one and the gradient texture in the bottom one, and this results into the factor of the color ramp. After you wait a while, obviously you can see that, well, we've gotten some kind of mixing going on here in the variation. First, let's just tweak these settings real quick. For me, the best I found for the noise texture was a value of 2 here, 6 in the details, and 0.7 in the roughness. Distortion, I kept it at 0. Now what we're gonna do is obviously tweak the color ramp a little, so just bring it in really tight, and as you can see, we've gotten that really tight look that we're going for right around the edges. Obviously right now we can't really do much to this texture, it is what it is, but we can obviously change how that texture transitions through a driver. But before we do that, let's just add that glow on the edge. To be able to do that, first we're going to duplicate the mix shader, plug it in here, and we're going to add a emission shader. I found a value of 50, and, well, whatever color you want. I'm just gonna go with orange because it looked nice, and plug in the emission at the bottom. And now for the factor, we're gonna use the same factor that we use here, right there. And as you can see, we've gotten that grainy glowing texture. Now all we need to do is the third final part, which is setting the driver to be able to drive the transition. To do that, first we'll add a texture coordinate node here and plug in object to vector, this object to the gradient texture as well. Now obviously it doesn't know what object to use, and that's when we're going to add our driver object, which is going to be an empty, not any object really, but for me I chose an empty. Now with that empty, I'm just going to place it to the side here. It's already there, but you might need to, and we're going to click on the eyedropper tool and select the empty. And now as you can see, if we move the empty, the texture moves along with it. Go back into the texture. As you can see, the texture coordinate is plugged straight into the noise and the gradient texture. We don't want that. Instead, we want a mapping texture. We need to move the actual mapping itself, the texture of it. not just what it looks like on the surface. To do that, it's as simple as plugging in the vector and plugging the vector here and plugging this vector down here. So it should look like this: texture coordinate plugged into the mapping texture with both of the vector and both of these textures. And well, that's it for today's tutorial. I hope you learned something new. Make sure to subscribe, hit that like button and the notification button. I'll see you in the next one.